never thought I'd become the office hero by essentially committing corporate sabotage, but sometimes life takes you down unexpected paths, especially when those paths involve an egomaniacal boss, an ill-timed coffee spill, and the company's most important client presentation of the year. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Alex Reynolds, and until 6 months ago, I was just another mid-level marketing analyst at Meridian Innovations, a tech firm in Austin that specializes in AI solutions for retail businesses. Not exactly the stuff of Hollywood blockbusters, I know, but it paid the bills and occasionally offered free pizza on Fridays. The kind of job where you can wear jeans most days, bring your dog to work on Wednesdays, and pretend the ping pong table in the break room somehow makes up for working until 9 p.m. during launch weeks. My life was perfectly, gloriously average. I had a decent apartment with a balcony overlooking a parking lot, a succulent collection that was only partially dying, and a Netflix queue full of shows I'd get around to watching someday. I dated occasionally, had a small but solid group of friends, and called my parents just often enough to avoid the "Are you still alive?" text. In other words, I was living the quintessential millennial dream, treading water financially while trying to convince myself that my job was making some kind of difference in the world. Then came Madison Chun. Madison was hired as our new VP of marketing 6 months ago, swooping in from some Silicon Valley startup with promises of disruption and paradigm shifts and other buzzwords that should have immediately set off alarm bells. She was 35, impeccably dressed in that tech executive way, expensive minimalist outfits that somehow never wrinkled, and possessed the kind of confidence that made people either want to follow her off a cliff or push her off one. That I fell into the latter category from day one. Team, I've reviewed our marketing strategy for the past 2 years, and frankly, I'm underwhelmed, she announced in her first all-hands meeting. We've been playing it safe, thinking small. That ends today. She proceeded to outline her vision, which basically involved scrapping everything we'd been working on and starting from scratch, with half the budget and impossible deadlines. When one brave soul raised his hand to ask about the feasibility of the timeline, Madison smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. I believe in setting ambitious goals. If you don't think you can meet them, perhaps Meridian isn't the right fit for you. And just like that, the tone was set. Madison Chun was not here to make friends. She was here to make waves, build her resume, and probably use Meridian as a stepping stone to a C-suite position somewhere bigger. The fact that she might crush a few souls along the way was merely collateral damage. Over the next few months, our once collaborative office culture transformed into something resembling a dystopian corporate nightmare. People started arriving earlier, leaving later, and looking progressively more exhausted. The once lively Slack channels fell silent except for work-related communications. Even the office dogs seemed depressed on Wednesdays. But Madison saved her special brand of micromanagement and criticism for me in particular. Maybe she sensed that I saw through her act from the beginning. Maybe she didn't like the way I questioned her more outlandish ideas in meetings, always respectfully, but still. Or maybe I was just the unfortunate person she'd decided to make an example of. Whatever the reason, my life became a special kind of hell. Every report I submitted came back covered in digital red ink. Every idea I proposed in meetings was immediately shot down. She accidentally left me off important email chains, then reprimanded me for not being prepared. Classic bullying tactics, but done with just enough plausible deniability that HR would never take action. "Alex, do you have a minute?" became the 5 words I dreaded most in the English language. Those minutes would inevitably turn into hour-long sessions where Madison would pick apart my work, my communication style, even my body language in meetings. "You need to lean in more," she'd say, apparently unaware of the irony of using feminist terminology while systematically undermining another professional. My coworkers noticed, of course, but most were too concerned with their own survival to intervene. A few offered sympathetic glances or after-work drinks where I could vent, but the general consensus was keep your head down and this too shall pass. The final straw came 3 months ago, when our team landed an opportunity to pitch to LuxTech, a potential client worth potentially $30 million in annual business. This would be the biggest account in Meridian's history, a genuine game changer. The entire marketing department was buzzing with excitement and anxiety. I'd been researching LuxTech for months, even before Madison arrived. They were exactly the kind of forward-thinking retail technology company that would benefit from our solutions, and I'd developed a comprehensive strategy for approaching them. When the RFP came in, I stayed late for a week preparing what I thought was an innovative, tailored pitch that addressed their specific pain points. The morning I was set to present my ideas to the internal team, Madison walked into the conference room, glanced at my carefully prepared slides and said, "Oh, I've already developed the pitch strategy. But thanks for your effort." She proceeded to present her own approach, which, to my complete disbelief, was almost identical to mine. The same key insights, the same strategic recommendations, even some of the same phrasing. The only difference was that now it had Madison Chen's name on it. She had stolen my work. Completely, blatantly stolen it. I sat there in stunned silence as my colleagues nodded along, complimenting her innovative thinking and strategic vision. When Ryan from the creative team caught my eye and raised an eyebrow, I just gave a small shake of my head. What could I say? It would be my word against hers, and everyone knew who the company valued more. After the meeting, Madison caught me by the arm as I was leaving. "Alex, I need you to take lead on preparing the deck for the LuxTech presentation, since you're familiar with the direction we're going." She smiled that non-smile again. "I'll need a draft by tomorrow morning, but that's my mom's birthday dinner tonight," I said. "I've had it planned for weeks. I already mentioned I'd be leaving early today." Madison's expression didn't change. "Well, we all have to make sacrifices sometimes. This account is priority number one for the entire company right now." I swallowed my anger. "Fine. I'll reschedule dinner." "Perfect. And make sure the slides really pop. Okay? The executive team will be watching this presentation closely." I called my mom and made up a work emergency, promising to make it up to her that weekend. She was understanding, as always, which somehow made me feel even worse. Then I stayed at the office until midnight, creating a presentation that would make Madison look good using my ideas. The next morning, I handed over the completed deck. Madison glanced through it quickly and frowned. "This isn't quite what I had in mind. The language is too technical and the design is basic. I need you to redo it. The presentation is in 2 days," I pointed out, "and the language matches what LuxTech uses in their own materials." "I'm aware of the timeline, Alex, and I'm telling you this doesn't meet our standards. Are you refusing to make the requested changes?" I took a deep breath. "No, I'll revise it." "Good. I need the new version by end of day." Another late night, another missed personal commitment. This time it was my friend's gallery opening that I'd promised to attend. By the time I finished the revised deck, which was substantially the same as the first version but with more buzzwords and flashier transitions, I was running on caffeine, rage, and very little else. When I submitted the new version, Madison barely glanced at it before saying, "This will have to do, I suppose. By the way, I need you to prepare handouts for the presentation. 30 copies, professionally bound. We need them by tomorrow at 2 p.m. for the client meeting." Tomorrow? But that's a tight timeline, yes. But that's the reality of high-stakes business, Alex. If you can't handle it, I can handle it, I interrupted, surprising us both with my sharpness. Madison raised an eyebrow. "Good. And since you're so invested in this presentation, you might as well attend. Be at the conference center tomorrow at 2 p.m. Business formal attire, please." After she walked away, I sat at my desk, vibrating with a toxic mix of exhaustion and rage. This woman had stolen my work, forced me to miss important personal events, belittled me at every turn, and now was expectedly treating me like her personal assistant. And yet, in some twisted way, I was still expected to feel grateful for being included in the presentation. That night, as I waited at the 24-hour print shop for the handouts, I had a lot of time to think. About workplace dynamics and power imbalances. About credit stealing and bullying. About what I was willing to tolerate and what I wasn't. By the time I picked up the perfectly bound presentations the next morning, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to quit. That would be giving Madison exactly what she wanted. I wasn't going to report her to HR. They had already demonstrated their unwillingness to address the issue. And I wasn't going to confront her directly. That would be career suicide. No, I was going to play the long game. I was going to document everything, build my case methodically, and when the time was right, Well, I didn't know exactly what I would do when the time was right, but it felt good to have some kind of plan beyond endure and survive. The day of the LuxTech presentation arrived. I dressed in my best suit, which admittedly had seen better days, gathered the handouts, and arrived at the downtown conference center 30 minutes early as instructed. The presentation was taking place in one of those sleek, modern meeting rooms with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline, the kind of space designed to impress potential clients with how serious and successful you are. Madison was already there, of course, looking immaculate in a charcoal gray power suit and heels that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She was arranging the handouts just so, angling the water pitchers for optimal accessibility, and generally micromanaging every possible detail. "Alex, finally," she said when she spotted me, as if I were late instead of early. "I need you to test the projector connection with my laptop. And make sure the lighting is right. I don't want any glare on the screen." I nodded and moved to the tech setup at the front of the room. As I was connecting cables and adjusting settings, the rest of our team began to file in: Ryan from creative, Priya from product, James from finance, and a few others. Then came our CEO, Thomas, and several other members of the executive team. Finally, the LuxTech contingent arrived, 5 people in total, led by their chief innovation officer, a woman named Elaine Woodward who had a reputation for being brilliant but demanding. Everyone exchanged handshakes and business cards, engaged in the obligatory small talk about traffic and weather, then took their seats around the massive conference table. I positioned myself in a chair against the wall, out of the main sight line but with a clear view of both the presentation screen and the participants. Madison took her place at the head of the table, confident and commanding as she began her introduction. "Thank you all for being here today. We at Meridian Innovations are thrilled about the potential partnership with LuxTech, and I'm excited to share our vision for how we can revolutionize your customer experience through our AI solutions." She launched into the presentation, clicking through the slides I had created while expertly delivering the pitch I had conceptualized. I had to admit she was good, polished, articulate, with just the right balance of technical knowledge and charismatic delivery. If I hadn't known that every idea she was presenting had been stolen from me, I might have been impressed. The LuxTech team seemed engaged, nodding along and occasionally making notes. Thomas, our CEO, was practically beaming as he watched Madison work her magic. Everything was going perfectly according to plan. Until it wasn't. About halfway through the presentation, Madison clicked to transition to the next slide, a crucial one that outlined our proposed implementation timeline, and nothing happened. She clicked again. Still nothing. A flicker of annoyance crossed her face as she tried once more. "Technical difficulties," she said with a forced laugh. "If you'll just give me a moment." I should have gotten up to help. That would have been the professional thing to do. Instead, I stayed seated, watching as Madison became increasingly flustered trying to troubleshoot. After what felt like an excruciatingly long minute, she looked up at me. "Alex, a little assistance, please." I rose and approached the laptop. "Let me take a look," I said, bending over to examine the computer. As I reached for the keyboard, my elbow accidentally bumped against Madison's coffee cup, the one she'd explicitly placed on the table despite my warning about keeping liquids away from the electronics. Time seemed to slow down as the cup tipped over, its contents spreading in a caffeinated wave across the keyboard of Madison's MacBook Pro. The screen flickered, glitched, and then went black. "Oh my God," Madison gasped, jumping back to avoid the coffee splashing onto her suit. "What did you just do?" "I'm so sorry," I said, grabbing napkins from the refreshment table and ineffectually dabbing at the keyboard. "It was an accident." The room had gone silent. Everyone was staring at the disaster unfolding before them. Not just the ruined laptop, but the derailed multi-million-dollar presentation. "Does anyone have a backup of the presentation?" Thomas asked, his voice tight with barely contained panic. Madison's face had gone pale. I knew exactly what she was thinking. She hadn't bothered to save the presentation anywhere but her laptop. Why would she? She was always in control, always prepared. Except for now. "I might be able to help," I said quietly. All eyes turned to me. "I have a copy on my drive," I continued. "I always keep backups of important projects." The relief on Thomas's face was immediate and profound. Thank God. Can you access it now? I nodded, pulling out my own laptop from my bag. I can have it up in just a minute. As I connected my computer to the projector and pulled up the presentation, I could feel Madison's eyes boring into me. If looks could kill, I'd have been vaporized on the spot. But she couldn't say anything, not without looking even more unprofessional in front of the clients and our CEO. While Alex gets that set up, Madison said through gritted teeth, perhaps I can take some questions about what we've covered so far. But Elaine Woodward from LuxTech raised her hand. Actually, if it's all the same to you, I'd like to hear the rest of the presentation from Alex, since it seems they're quite familiar with the material. Madison froze. Oh, well, Alex is part of my team, but I'm actually the lead on this project and I'm sure you are, Elaine interrupted smoothly. But I've found that sometimes the people closest to the work have the most valuable insights. And since we're already dealing with an unexpected situation, why not embrace it? Thomas, ever attuned to the wishes of potential big clients, quickly nodded. Excellent suggestion. Alex is extremely knowledgeable about this proposal. Madison, you won't mind if Alex takes us through the rest of the presentation, will you? It wasn't really a question. Madison's smile was so brittle it looked like her face might crack. Of course not. Alex, please proceed. And so I did. I stood at the front of that gleaming conference room, with the Austin skyline behind me and every important person in my professional life in front of me, and I delivered the presentation of my career. Not Madison's stolen version, but my original vision, the one I'd developed before she ever set foot in our office. I knew this material inside and out because it was mine. I spoke with genuine passion about the solutions I had researched and developed. I answered questions thoughtfully and with specific technical details that Madison would never have known. And throughout it all, I maintained the perfect balance of professional confidence and collaborative humility. By the end, Elaine Woodward was leaning forward in her seat, fully engaged. This is exactly the kind of innovative thinking we were hoping to find, she said when I concluded. I particularly appreciate how your approach addresses our inventory forecasting challenges. That's something none of the other firms we've spoken with have tackled effectively. Thomas was positively glowing with pride, as if he'd discovered me himself. Alex has been a key player in our marketing strategy development, he said, conveniently forgetting how he'd ignored me in every executive meeting for the past 6 months. Madison sat rigid in her chair, her coffee-stained notebook in front of her, saying nothing. What could she say? The presentation had been saved. The client was impressed. Any complaint would look like petty jealousy. As the meeting concluded and everyone began to disperse, Elaine approached me directly. I'd like to continue this conversation, she said, handing me her business card. Call my office tomorrow to set up a follow-up meeting. I have some specific questions about implementation that I'd like to discuss with you personally. I accepted the card, aware that Madison was watching this exchange with barely concealed fury. I'd be happy to, I replied. Thank you for the opportunity. After the LuxTech team departed, Thomas clapped me on the shoulder. Outstanding work, Alex. Truly outstanding. We'll need to talk about your role going forward. Clearly, you've got talents we haven't been fully utilizing. Madison chose that moment to interject. Yes, Alex certainly surprised us all today. Her tone suggested this wasn't entirely a compliment. Thomas, when you have a moment, I'd like to discuss some concerns about team dynamics. Thomas nodded distractedly, already turning back to me. Let's have lunch tomorrow, Alex. My assistant will set it up. As the room cleared out, Madison and I were left alone. The silence between us was electric with tension. That was quite a performance, she finally said, her voice low. I suppose you think you're very clever. I met her gaze steadily. It was my work, Madison. All of it. The research, the strategy, the deck. All mine. It was a team effort under my direction, she countered automatically. But there was no conviction behind it. We both know that's not true. Just like we both know that spilled coffee was no accident. Her eyes widened slightly at my admission. You deliberately sabotaged a client presentation? Do you have any idea how unprofessional and potentially damaging that was? If I tell Thomas, What will you tell him exactly? I interrupted. That you stole my work and presented it as your own? That you've been systematically undermining me for months? That you have no actual backup systems in place for critical client materials? She took a step toward me, voice dropping to a near whisper. This isn't over, Alex. Not by a long shot. I smiled, feeling strangely calm. Actually, I think it is. But I appreciate the heads up that I should start documenting our conversations more carefully. I turned to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and Madison? You might want to dry out your laptop. Rice sometimes helps with liquid damage. The next 48 hours were a whirlwind. My lunch with Thomas turned into a detailed discussion of my vision for the department and ended with a promotion offer, Senior Director of Strategic Marketing, reporting directly to him rather than Madison. My follow-up call with Elaine Woodward resulted in an invitation to LuxTech's headquarters to discuss our proposal further, an invitation extended specifically to me, not Madison. And then there was Madison herself, who seemed to be executing a scorched earth policy in her final days at Meridian. Yes, final days. Turns out that when your entire professional value proposition is built on stolen ideas and intimidation tactics, things fall apart pretty quickly once that facade cracks. The official story was that Madison had decided to pursue other opportunities, corporate speak for quit before she could be fired. The unofficial story, which spread through office gossip channels faster than a viral TikTok, was much juicier. Apparently, after our confrontation, Madison had stormed into Thomas's office to demand my termination for sabotage and insubordination. Unfortunately for her, she made this demand in front of our VP of People Operations, who had been in Thomas's office discussing an unrelated matter. When pressed for details about my alleged misconduct, Madison's explanation grew increasingly convoluted and defensive. This prompted Thomas to initiate a review of our team's work over the past 6 months. Emails were examined, project files were time-stamped, colleagues were interviewed, and a pattern emerged that couldn't be ignored. Madison had been systematically claiming credit for her team's work, particularly mine, while creating a hostile work environment that was driving top talent toward the exits. The final nail in her professional coffin came when Priya from product development revealed that Madison had pressured her to falsify certain metrics in our LuxTech proposal, metrics that I had corrected in my version of the presentation. If LuxTech had moved forward based on Madison's inflated numbers, we could have faced serious legal and financial consequences. Madison was given the option to resign immediately or face termination with cause. She chose the former, but not before sending a company-wide email accusing me of orchestrating a calculated campaign to undermine her leadership and warning that Meridian would regret choosing mediocrity over excellence. The email was deleted from the server within an hour, but not before everyone had read, screenshot, and thoroughly enjoyed it by the time I arrived at work the morning after Madison's departure. Her office had been cleared out, her name removed from the company directory, and her corporate headshot taken down from the leadership section of our website. It was as if she had never existed on my new office. Yes, I got her old one, complete with the corner windows and actually functional ergonomic chair, was filled with congratulatory messages, plants, and an assortment of coffee cups with notes saying things like, "Spill me if you must," and "Career advancement juice." My team's dark humor was apparently intact despite months of Madison's reign of terror. At AS, I settled into my new role. I discovered something surprising. I was actually good at it. Really good. Without Madison's constant criticism and undermining, my confidence returned. Ideas flowed more freely. I built a collaborative team culture where credit was shared and midnight work sessions were the exception rather than the rule. We landed the LuxTech account, followed by 2 other major clients who had heard about our innovative approach. 6 months after the coffee incident, Meridian's marketing department was thriving. We'd been featured in industry publications, our campaign metrics were the best in company history, and employee satisfaction scores had skyrocketed. Thomas had taken to introducing me as the future of our company in executive meetings. And Madison? Last I heard, she was consulting, which everyone knows is what you do when no one will hire you. Her LinkedIn profile described her as a transformational leader specializing in disruptive marketing strategies, which I suppose is one way to characterize what happened. I sometimes wonder if I should feel guilty about that spilled coffee. It was, technically speaking, sabotage. A deliberate act designed to create a crisis that I knew I could solve better than Madison could. Was it ethical? Probably not. Was it justified after months of her stealing my work and crushing my professional spirit? I like to think so. The truth is, in the corporate world, sometimes you have to create your own opportunities. Sometimes you have to force people to see your value. And sometimes you have to be willing to spill a little coffee to put out a much bigger fire. That I keep a small potted plant on my desk now, the only surviving member of my once thriving succulent collection. It's called a watch chain succulent, known for its resilience and ability to thrive under harsh conditions. Every morning when I water it, I'm reminded that sometimes the things that try to bury you are actually helping you grow. And I did eventually make it up to my mom for missing her birthday dinner. I flew her to Austin for a weekend of pampering, complete with a 5-star dinner where I didn't once check my work email. As we clinked glasses, she said, "To my brilliant child, who finally learned that sometimes you have to break the rules to fix the game. Mothers always know, don't they?" Thank you for listening to my story today. If it resonated with you in any way, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to reassess your relationship with family members? Sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones we share with each other. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories about family dynamics, personal growth, and the complicated beauty of human relationships.